Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he looked at the endless red rocks around him. The planet Kepler 4b was not a friendly place. The sun burned too hot during the day, and the nights were freezing cold. He had been alone on this mining survey for 3 weeks now. His job was simple: find valuable minerals and mark their locations for the mining companies back on Earth. His camp sat in a small valley between 2 rocky hills, a basic shelter, some equipment for testing rocks, and enough food for 2 months. Jake preferred working alone. No chatter from other crew members, no arguments about where to go next. Just him and the work. That morning started like all the others. Jake packed his testing gear and headed toward the eastern hills. The scanner in his hand beeped as it detected different metals in the rocks: iron, copper, some rare elements that would make the mining companies very happy. He was marking coordinates on his datapad when he heard a sound. It was soft at first, like a whimpering cry. Jake stopped walking and listened. The sound came again, weaker this time. It seemed to come from behind a large boulder about 50 meters away. Jake walked toward the sound, his boots crunching on the loose stones. Behind the boulder, he found something that made him freeze. A small creature lay on its side, barely moving. It looked like nothing Jake had ever seen before. The creature was about the size of a large dog, but its body was covered in scales that shifted color from blue to silver as the light hit them. It had 4 legs that ended in what looked like small hands with sharp claws. Its head was triangular, like a snake, but with large eyes that seemed almost human. The creature looked up at Jake with those strange eyes. They were a deep purple color and filled with pain and fear. Jake could see that the creature was very thin. Its ribs showed through its scaled skin, and its breathing was shallow and rapid. Jake took a step back. His training said he should report any alien life forms immediately and avoid contact. But looking at the small creature, Jake could not bring himself to walk away. It was clearly dying and alone. The creature made the whimpering sound again and tried to lift its head. Jake knelt down slowly, keeping his hands visible. The creature watched him but did not try to move away. Either it was too weak to run, or it somehow understood that Jake meant no harm. Jake pulled out his water bottle and poured a small amount into his palm. He held his hand near the creature's mouth. The creature sniffed at the water, then began to drink eagerly. Its long tongue lapped at the water in Jake's palm until every drop was gone. The creature looked up at Jake again, and its eyes seemed brighter. Jake smiled despite himself. He opened his backpack and pulled out an energy bar. The creature watched as Jake broke off a small piece and held it out. After a moment of hesitation, the creature took the food and ate it quickly. Jake spent the next hour giving the creature small amounts of food and water. Slowly, the creature became stronger. It was able to sit up and even took a few shaky steps. Jake noticed that when the creature moved, its scales seemed to shimmer and change color slightly as the day grew hotter. Jake decided to carry the creature back to his camp. The creature did not resist when Jake picked it up. It was surprisingly light and its scales felt warm and smooth. During the walk back, the creature kept its large purple eyes fixed on Jake's face. At the camp, Jake set up a small shelter for the creature using some spare equipment covers. He gave it more food and water and watched as it began to look around with curiosity rather than fear. The creature seemed particularly interested in Jake's equipment. It would tilt its head and make soft chirping sounds when Jake worked on his datapad or scanner. That evening, Jake sat by his small campfire and tried to figure out what to do. The creature had curled up near the fire and was sleeping peacefully. Every few minutes it would make soft rumbling sounds that reminded Jake of a cat purring. Jake knew he should contact his supervisors and report the creature, but he also knew what would happen next. A research team would arrive and take the creature away. They would run tests and experiments. The creature would spend the rest of its life in a lab somewhere. Looking at the small being sleeping by his fire, Jake made a decision. He would not report the creature yet, at least not until he could figure out where it came from and if it had family somewhere on this planet. Over the next few days, Jake and the creature developed a routine. Jake would do his mineral surveys during the cooler morning hours, while the creature stayed at camp. It seemed to understand that Jake would always return. When Jake came back each day, the creature would run to meet him with excited chirping sounds. Jake decided to call the creature Zara. He was not sure if it was male or female, but Zara seemed to fit. The creature responded to the name and would look up whenever Jake said it. Zara grew stronger quickly. Soon, it was following Jake on his short surveys near the camp. The creature was incredibly agile, climbing over rocks that Jake had to walk around. Its claws allowed it to grip almost any surface. Jake noticed that Zara seemed to sense things before he did. The creature would stop and tilt its head, as if listening to sounds Jake could not hear. One morning, Jake was testing rocks near a cliff. When Zara suddenly became agitated, the creature ran back and forth and made urgent chirping sounds. Jake looked around but saw nothing unusual. Then Zara grabbed Jake's pants leg with its teeth and pulled him away from the cliff. Seconds later, a section of the cliff collapsed exactly where Jake had been standing. Rocks crashed down into the valley below. Jake stared at the pile of stones. That would have crushed him. Zara sat nearby, making the rumbling purr sound that seemed to mean it was pleased. That night, Jake realized that Zara was far more intelligent than any animal he knew. The creature had saved his life by recognizing the danger before Jake could see it. Jake began to wonder what kind of species Zara belonged to and where the rest of them might be. Jake also began to notice that his equipment was acting strangely when Zara was nearby. His scanner would sometimes pick up energy readings that disappeared. When Zara moved away, his communication equipment would make soft musical tones when Zara touched it. Jake suspected that Zara was somehow affecting his electronic devices, but he could not figure out how. After 2 weeks with Zara, Jake finally made up his mind. He would extend his survey mission and search for signs of Zara's species. The creature was clearly not native to this barren area. There had to be others somewhere on the planet. Jake packed extra supplies and prepared for a longer journey. Zara seemed to understand that they were going somewhere new. The creature was more excited than usual, running around the camp and making happy chirping sounds as they prepared to leave the valley. Jake looked back at his temporary home. He had come to this planet looking for minerals. Instead, he had found something much more valuable, a friend who had already saved his life and who trusted him completely. Jake did not know that his decision to search for Zara's family would lead him to discoveries that would change everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. He did not know that other species were already living on this planet. Most importantly, he did not know that his simple act of kindness toward one small creature would soon make him the center of the first peaceful contact between 3 very different species. But as Jake and Zara walked toward the northern hills, Jake felt hopeful. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he would not face them alone. Jake and Zara had been traveling north for 5 days when they reached the forest. It was the first green area Jake had seen on the entire planet. Tall trees with silver bark stretched toward the sky, and their leaves seemed to glow with a soft, blue light. The air here was cooler and smelled fresh, unlike the dusty valleys they had left behind. Zara became more excited as they entered the forest. The creature ran ahead, then came back to Jake repeatedly, as if urging him to move faster. Its scales shifted to green and blue colors that matched the forest around them. Jake realized that Zara's color changing might be more than just a reaction to light. The forest was beautiful, but also strange. Jake noticed that many of the plants looked almost too perfect. The flowers were arranged in patterns that seemed too organized to be natural. Some trees had markings carved into their bark that looked like writing. Jake began to suspect that someone lived in this forest. On their second day in the forest, Jake found proof that he was right. Hidden between a group of large trees, he discovered what looked like buildings. They were made from living wood that had been shaped and grown rather than cut and built. The structures blended so perfectly with the forest that Jake almost walked past them. Jake stopped and stared at the beautiful buildings. Zara sat beside him and made soft chirping sounds, as if asking what they should do next. Before Jake could decide, 3 figures stepped out from behind the trees. They were unlike anything Jake had ever seen. The 3 beings looked human in shape but were clearly not human. They were tall and thin with pointed ears and large eyes. Their skin was pale and seemed to have a faint glow. They wore clothes made from materials that looked like woven leaves and moved like fabric. The 3 beings spread out to surround Jake and Zara. They carried weapons that looked like bows, but were made from the same glowing wood as their buildings. Jake raised his hands to show he meant no harm. The tallest of the 3 beings stepped forward. She had long silver hair and eyes that were a bright green color. When she spoke, her voice was musical and clear. "Human, you are far from your usual territory. Why do you bring a Kairothi cub to our sanctuary?" Jake was surprised that she spoke his language, though her accent was strange. He was also surprised that she knew what Zara was. "My name is Jake Morrison. I found Zara injured and starving. I am trying to help her find her family. I did not know anyone lived in this forest." The 3 beings looked at each other and had a quick conversation in a language that sounded like singing. Jake could not understand the words, but the tone seemed to be one of debate. The silver-haired woman turned back to Jake. "I am Luna Brightleaf. These are my companions, Maya and Kate Moon. We are elves, and this forest is our home. You say you are helping the Kairothi cub, but Kairothi are dangerous predators. They hunt and kill without mercy." Jake looked down at Zara, who was sitting calmly beside him. The creature looked up at him, with those large purple eyes, and made a soft purring sound. Jake found it hard to believe that anything so gentle could be dangerous. "Zara has never hurt me. She even saved my life when a cliff was about to collapse. She seems very intelligent and friendly." Maya, who had dark hair and carried herself like a warrior, laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Kairothi cubs are different from adults. When they grow up, they become monsters. Their adults are twice the size of humans and can tear metal with their claws. Kate, who appeared younger than the others and had curious eyes, stepped closer to look at Zara. "But this one does seem different. Look how its scales change color, and how calmly it sits." Most Kairothi cubs are wild and aggressive. Luna studied Jake and Zara for a long moment. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human, but you have shown kindness to a creature that most would fear. For that reason we will not turn you away. However, you and the cub may not stay in our sanctuary. It is too dangerous." Jake felt disappointed, but he understood their caution. "Could you at least tell me where I might find other Kairothi? I need to return Zara to her family." The 3 elves looked surprised at Jake's request. Maya shook her head. "You want to find adult Kairothi? That is madness. They will kill you before you can explain why you have their cub. But I cannot just abandon Zara. She trusts me and she needs to be with her own kind." Luna and the others spoke again in their musical language. Jake noticed that Kate kept looking at Zara with interest, while Maya seemed worried. Finally, Luna turned back to Jake. "There is something wrong in our forest. Our food plants are dying from a sickness we cannot cure. Our healers are failing, and our people grow hungry. Perhaps your human knowledge could help us find a solution. In return, we will tell you what we know about the Kairothi and help heal the cub's remaining injuries." Jake considered the offer. He was a geologist, not a doctor, but he might be able to help them understand what was affecting their plants. It would also give him time to learn more about this planet and its inhabitants. "I will try to help you with your plant sickness, but I am not a biologist. I study rocks and minerals." Kate's eyes brightened. "Rocks and minerals affect soil, which affects plants. You might see something we have missed." Luna nodded. "Then it is agreed. You may stay in our forest for 1 week. Kate will show you the sick areas and translate between us. In return, you will share your knowledge over the next few days. Jake learned much about the elves and their society. They had come to this planet decades ago, when their home world was destroyed by a natural disaster. The forest was all that remained of their once great civilization. They had used their knowledge of plants and growing things to create a new home, but they were struggling to survive. The elves were fascinated by Jake's equipment and his knowledge of geology. In return, they taught him about their bioenergy techniques and how they shaped living wood into tools and buildings. Jake found their technology was very different from human technology, but equally advanced in its own way. Zara seemed to enjoy the forest environment. The creature played among the trees and showed interest in the elves' glowing plants. Kate spent hours observing Zara and was amazed by the creature's intelligence and gentle behavior. I have studied many creatures, Kate told Jake one evening, but I have never seen a young predator act like this. Zara seems to understand not just words but emotions. Watch how she responds when you are happy or sad. Jake had noticed the same thing. Zara seemed to sense his moods and would comfort him when he was tired or frustrated. The creature also appeared to be learning elvish words from listening to Kate. On the 4th day, Jake made an important discovery. While examining the soil around the dying plants, he found that the mineral content was wrong. The plants needed certain trace elements that were missing from the soil. Jake's geological survey equipment detected large deposits of these minerals deeper underground. Your plants are not sick, Jake explained to Luna and the others. They are starving. The minerals they need are here, but too deep for the roots to reach. If we could bring those minerals to the surface, your plants would recover. The elves were excited by this news, but they did not know how to reach the deep minerals. Jake suggested they could dig wells or channels to bring mineral-rich water to the surface. It would be hard work, but it could save their forest. Luna was grateful for Jake's help. You have given us hope, human. Our people will work day and night to dig these channels. In return, I will tell you what you need to know about the Kyrithi. That evening, Luna shared the elves' knowledge about Zara's species. The Kyrithi were a proud warrior race that valued honor and strength above all else. They traveled the galaxy in great ships and were known as fierce fighters. Most species feared them and avoided contact. But they are not evil, Luna explained. They have their own code of honor and they protect their young fiercely. If adult Kyrithi are searching for this cub, they will not stop until they find her. Maya added her own warning. Kyrithi do not trust easily. If they find you with their cub, they will assume you took her by force. You will need to prove that you helped her, not harmed her. Jake felt worried about meeting adult Kyrithi, but he knew he had to try. Zara deserved to be with her own family no matter how dangerous it might be for him. On their last night in the forest, Kate made an unexpected suggestion. I would like to come with you when you search for the Kyrithi. I have studied their language and customs. I might be able to help you communicate with them. Luna and Maya were strongly against this idea, but Kate argued that peaceful contact with the Kyrithi could benefit both species. Eventually, Luna agreed that Kate could accompany Jake, but only if they promised to return to the forest safely. As Jake prepared to leave the elf sanctuary, he reflected on how much his simple mining mission had changed. He had started alone, looking for minerals. Now he was traveling with an alien cub and an elf diplomat on a mission that could determine the fate of multiple species. Jake did not know that Kyrithi ships were already approaching the planet. He did not know that the adult Kyrithi were preparing for war, believing their cub had been captured by enemies. Most importantly, he did not know that his next few days would test everything he believed about friendship, trust, and the possibility of peace between different species. But as Jake, Zara, and Kate left a glowing forest behind them, Jake felt ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. He had gained allies and knowledge, Most importantly, he had learned that even the most different species could find common ground. When they chose to see past their fears, the morning sky turned dark as the massive ship descended toward the planet's surface. Jake had never seen anything so large or frightening. The Kyrathi vessel was longer than 3 city blocks and covered in armor plating that gleamed like black metal. Strange symbols were carved along its sides, and weapon ports lined its hull like hungry mouths. Jake, Zara, and Kate had been traveling for 2 days since leaving the elf forest. They were camped in a rocky area between the forest and the mining valleys when the ship appeared. The sound of its engines was like thunder that never stopped. Zara became very excited when she saw the ship. The small creature ran in circles and made loud chirping calls toward the sky. Her scales shifted to bright gold and silver colors that Jake had never seen before. It was clear that Zara recognized the ship and knew her family was aboard. Kate grabbed Jake's arm as they watched. The ship landed about 1 kilometer away. "Jake, we need to be very careful now. Kyrathi warriors are not like their cubs. They are trained for battle from birth, and they do not trust strangers." The ship settled into the rocky ground with a sound like an earthquake. Dust and small stones were thrown in all directions by the powerful engines. When the noise finally stopped and eerie silence fell over the landscape, Jake checked his equipment one more time. Kate had taught him some basic Kyrathi words during their journey. The most important phrase was peaceful intentions, which Kate said might keep them alive long enough to explain the situation. They did not have to wait long. 3 figures emerged from the ship, and Jake's heart nearly stopped when he saw them. The adult Kyrathi were massive creatures that stood over 8 feet tall. Their scales were darker than Zara's and covered bodies that were clearly built for fighting. Their arms ended in claws that looked capable of tearing through metal, and their eyes glowed with an inner fire. The lead, Kyrathi, was slightly larger than the others, and wore what appeared to be armor made from the same material as their ship. When she moved, Jake could see that every step was controlled and purposeful, like a predator stalking prey. The 3 warriors moved toward Jake's camp with frightening speed. Despite their size, they covered ground quickly and silently. Jake realized that these creatures would be nearly impossible to escape from if they decided to attack. Zara saw the approaching warriors and ran toward them with joyful chirping sounds. The lead warrior stopped suddenly when she saw the small cub running toward her. Her fierce expression changed to one of relief and something that might have been joy. The warrior knelt down as Zara reached her, and the small cub leaped into her arms. The reunion was touching to watch as the huge warrior gently held the tiny creature and made soft rumbling sounds. Jake realized he was watching a mother reunited with her child. But the tender moment did not last long. The warrior's eyes found Jake and Kate, and her expression hardened again. She stood up with Zara still in her arms, and the other 2 warriors moved to flank her. All 3 began advancing toward Jake and Kate again. Kate stepped forward and spoke in the musical language of the Kyrathi. Her pronunciation was careful and clear. "Honored warriors, we come with peaceful intentions. The human has cared for your cub and seeks to return her safely to her family." The lead warrior stopped and tilted her head, as if surprised to hear her language spoken by an elf. She responded in Kyrathi, and Jake was relieved that her tone seemed less threatening. Kate translated quickly. "She says her name is Vera Shadowclaw, and she is Zara's mother. She wants to know why we have her daughter and whether we have harmed her." Jake stepped forward slowly, keeping his hands visible. "Tell her that I found Zara injured and starving. I gave her food and water and have been searching for her family ever since. Zara has never been harmed while she was with me." Kate translated Jake's words. Vera listened carefully while examining Zara for signs of injury or illness. The small cub appeared healthy and happy, which seemed to support Jake's claims. The second warrior, who was slightly smaller than Vera, but looked equally dangerous, spoke in rapid Kyrathi. Kate's expression grew worried as she listened. This is Rose Ironscale, Vera's sister. She says that many species lie about their intentions toward Kyrithi cubs. She thinks we might be planning to sell Zara to slavers or researchers. The third warrior, who appeared younger than the others, also spoke. Her tone seemed less aggressive than Rose's. This is Amy Stormfang. She says that Zara appears well cared for and shows no fear of the human. She suggests we should listen to their full story before making judgments. Vera looked back and forth between her companions, then spoke again. Kate nodded as she translated. Vera says they will hear our story, but any deception will result in immediate punishment. She also wants to know why an elf is traveling with a human, and why we are both so far from our usual territories. Jake took a deep breath and began to tell the full story of how he found Zara and everything that had happened since. Kate translated carefully, making sure that every detail was communicated accurately. Jake noticed that the warriors' expressions grew less hostile as the story continued. When Jake described how Zara had saved him from the cliff collapse, all three warriors looked surprised. Vera spoke to Zara in their language, and the cub responded with excited chirps and gestures. It seemed that Zara was confirming Jake's version of events. The revelation that surprised the warriors most was learning about the elf colony in the forest. Rose and Amy both looked skeptical when Kate explained how Jake had helped solve the elves' plant problem. Kyrithi and elves have been enemies for generations, Kate translated from Rose. Elves are weak creatures who use trickery instead of strength. They cannot be trusted. Kate's own expression grew angry at this insult, but she controlled herself and responded diplomatically. The elves of this world are refugees who seek only to survive in peace. They have shown kindness to strangers and asked for nothing in return, except knowledge. This began an argument between the three warriors. Jake could not understand their words, but their body language made it clear that they disagreed about something important. Vera seemed to be considering multiple viewpoints while Rose appeared angry, and Amy looked curious. Finally Vera spoke again, and Kate translated with relief in her voice. Vera says that Zara's safety is their primary concern. Since the cub appears healthy and happy, they will not take immediate action against us. However, they want to see the elf colony for themselves, to determine if it represents a threat. Jake felt both relieved and worried. The warriors were not going to attack them immediately, but bringing them to the elf forest could create new problems. Luna and the others would not be expecting visitors, especially not Kyrithi warriors. I need to warn my friends that you are coming, Jake said. They will be frightened if armed warriors appear without notice. Vera spoke with her companions again, before responding. We will allow you to contact your elf friends, but if this is a trap, or if they attempt to harm Zara, we will destroy their entire colony. Jake used his communication equipment to contact Luna at the elf sanctuary. The conversation was difficult, as Luna was shocked to learn that Kyrithi warriors were on the planet. Jake had to convince her that meeting with them was the only way to avoid conflict. They are not here to fight, Jake explained. They just want to make sure their cub is safe, and that we are not a threat to their people. Luna was reluctant, but finally agreed to meet with the warriors. Bring them to the forest edge, but not into our sanctuary. We will meet them in neutral ground. The journey to the forest was tense. The three Kyrithi warriors moved like a military unit, with Vera in the lead, and Rose and Amy covering the flanks. They carried weapons that looked far more advanced than anything Jake had seen before. Zara seemed to enjoy having her family nearby again. She ran back and forth between Jake and her mother, chattering in her own language. Jake noticed that Vera watched these interactions carefully, as if trying to understand the bond between her daughter and the human. When they reached the forest edge, Luna was waiting with Maya and several other elves. The two groups faced each other across a small clearing, both ready for violence if necessary. The initial confrontation was exactly what Jake had feared. Rose immediately accused the elves of being part of a conspiracy to steal Kyrithi cubs. Maya responded by questioning why HFY warriors were threatening peaceful refugees. The situation grew more heated until Zara did something unexpected. The small cub ran to the center of the clearing between both groups and began making distressed sounds. Her scales turned to a dark blue color that seemed to indicate sadness or fear. Both groups stopped arguing and looked at the small creature. Zara looked back and forth between the elves and warriors, then ran to Jake and climbed into his arms. She made soft chirping sounds as if asking him to make the fighting stop. Jake realized that Zara was trying to tell them something important. She does not want anyone to fight. Look how upset she gets when we argue, Vera spoke quietly to Kate, who translated. Vera says that HFY cubs are very sensitive to emotional conflicts. Zara's distress proves that she sees both groups as friends and does not want them to hurt each other. This observation seemed to affect both sides. Luna stepped forward and spoke directly to Vera, using Kate as a translator. Elder Vera, we elves have no quarrel with your people. We are refugees, seeking only to rebuild our lives in peace. The human Jake helped us when we were dying and asked for nothing in return. We believe his kindness toward your daughter comes from the same generous spirit. Vera studied Luna for a long moment before responding. Your words sound honest, elf leader. But HFY have learned to be cautious. Many species have tried to deceive us in the past. Amy surprised everyone by speaking up. Mother Vera, perhaps we should observe these beings for a time before making final judgments. The cub clearly trusts them, and she has always been a good judge of character. Jake noticed that Amy had called Vera Mother Vera, which suggested some kind of family relationship. He also realized that the warriors were not just random soldiers, but were all connected to Zara in some way. The tense standoff continued as both groups tried to decide what to do next. Jake knew that the next few hours would determine whether this first contact between three species would end in friendship or war. Zara seemed to sense the importance of the moment. She climbed down from Jake's arms and walked to each group in turn. She touched Luna's hand with her small claws, then did the same to Vera. Her scales shifted to a warm golden color that seemed to represent hope. Jake realized that a small creature, who had once been starving and alone, might now be the key to preventing a conflict that could affect the entire galaxy. The storm came without warning. Dark clouds gathered in the afternoon sky, and within an hour, the wind was howling through the forest with dangerous force. Rain fell in sheets so thick that Jake could barely see 10 feet in any direction. Lightning cracked overhead and thunder shook the ground beneath their feet. Both the elves and HFY warriors realized they needed shelter immediately. Luna made a quick decision that would change everything. Our underground shelters can protect everyone from the storm, she called out over the wind. But we must go now before the lightning gets worse. Vera looked suspicious at the offer, but Rose pointed out that they had little choice. The storm was becoming more violent by the minute, and even their advanced armor would not protect them from a direct lightning strike. We accept your shelter, Vera decided, but our weapons stay with us. Luna nodded. Of course. We ask only that no one draws weapons unless there is true danger. The journey to the underground shelters was difficult and frightening. Trees bent in the wind and branches crashed down around them. Jake carried Zara to protect her from the flying debris, while the warriors and elves worked together to clear fallen obstacles from their path. The elf shelters were carved into a hillside and extended deep underground. They were larger than Jake had expected, with multiple chambers connected by smooth tunnels. Bioluminescent plants provided soft blue light, and the air was warm and dry. As the group settled into the main chamber, Jake realized that this was the first time elves and HFY had shared the same space peacefully in perhaps centuries. The warriors sat on one side of the room, while the elves gathered on the other. Jake and Kate found themselves in the middle, acting as unofficial mediators. Zara seemed unaffected by the tension between the adults. She explored the underground chambers with curiosity, and played with the glowing plants that grew from the walls. Her innocent joy gradually helped ease the atmosphere in the shelter. The storm raged for 3 days. During that time, the groups had no choice but to interact and share the limited space. What started as suspicious cooperation slowly became something closer to understanding. On the first night, Luna shared the elves' food with everyone. The HFY warriors were surprised by the generous gesture, and Vera admitted that the plant-based meal was better than their own emergency rations. "Your people have skill with growing things," Vera told Luna through Kate's translation. "HFY have always focused on hunting and fighting. We must trade with other species for plant foods." Luna was interested to learn about HFY society. "We elves have the opposite problem. We can grow almost anything, but we are not skilled at making tools or weapons. We must be very careful to avoid conflicts because we cannot fight effectively." Rose had been listening to this conversation with growing interest. "You say you cannot fight, but your forest defenses are very sophisticated. We had difficulty detecting your buildings even with our advanced sensors." Maya smiled proudly. "Hiding and avoiding conflict is different from fighting. We have learned to blend with nature so well that most enemies simply cannot find us." This impressed Amy, who was the youngest of the warriors. "That is actually very clever. HFY tactics focus on direct confrontation, but your methods might be more effective against certain types of enemies." Jake watched these exchanges with growing hope. When the groups stopped seeing each other as threats, they began to appreciate each other's strengths and knowledge. On the second day, the conversation turned to technology, and Jake found himself explaining human methods to both groups. The elves were fascinated by his geological equipment, while the HFY wanted to understand human manufacturing techniques. "Humans seem to find middle ground between different approaches," Vera observed. "You are not as skilled as elves with biological systems, or as strong as HFY in combat, but you adapt quickly to new situations." Kate added her own perspective. "I have noticed that Jake solves problems by combining ideas from different sources. When he helped our plant sickness, he used geological knowledge that neither elves nor HFY would have thought to apply." This led to a longer discussion about the strengths of different species. Rose admitted that HFY society sometimes suffered because they focused too much on military solutions. Luna acknowledged that elves often struggled with practical problems because they avoided taking direct action. "Perhaps," Amy suggested carefully, "different species could help each other instead of always competing or fighting." This was a radical idea for both elves and HFY. Their species had been enemies for so long that cooperation seemed almost impossible to imagine. On the third day, Zara did something that amazed everyone. The small cub had been listening to all the conversations and watching the adults interact. She had clearly been learning from what she observed. Zara walked to the center of the chamber and began making a series of sounds and gestures. At first, Jake thought she was just playing, but then he realized that she was imitating the different languages she had heard. She made elvish musical sounds while moving her hands in the graceful gestures that Luna used. Then she switched to HFY, rumbling calls while standing in the proud posture that Vera favored. Finally, she made human-like sounds while mimicking Jake's habit of pointing at things when he explained them. The adults stared in amazement as the small cub demonstrated that she had learned elements of all three communication styles. When she finished her performance, Zara sat down and looked at each group expectantly. "She is showing us that we can all learn from each other," Kate whispered in wonder. "A child understands what we adults have failed to see." Vera looked at her daughter with obvious pride, but also surprise. "HFY cubs are intelligent, but I have never seen one learn so quickly or show such understanding of complex social situations." Luna studied Zara thoughtfully. "I think her unusual experiences have made her develop abilities that normal cubs do not have. She has been exposed to 3 different species during a critical learning period." Jake realized that Zara had become something unique, a being who truly understood multiple species and could serve as a bridge between them. This gave him an idea that could solve several problems at once. What if we all stayed on this planet together? Jake suggested. The elves need help with practical problems like mining and construction. The Kyrithi need reliable sources of plant, foods, and peaceful trading partners. Humans could benefit from learning about both elf biotechnology and Kyrithi materials science. The suggestion was met with initial silence as each group considered the implications. It was Vera who spoke first. Such an arrangement would require trust that has never existed between our species. How could we be certain that one group would not betray the others? Maya had been thinking about military implications. A mixed colony would be vulnerable to attack from enemies of any of the three species. We would need to coordinate our defense systems, but Amy was more optimistic. It could also be much stronger than any single species colony. Each group could contribute their best abilities while others covered their weaknesses. Luna was considering the practical aspects. We would need to establish new customs and laws that respected all three cultures. That would require careful negotiation and compromise. Kate was excited by the possibilities. Think about what we could accomplish together. Elf knowledge of biological systems, Kyrithi engineering and materials, human adaptability and problem solving. We could create something entirely new. Jake looked at Zara, who was watching the adults discuss her future. The small cub seemed to understand that this conversation was important. Her scales had shifted to the warm, golden color that indicated happiness and hope. Zara has already shown us that it is possible, Jake said. She loves and trusts individuals from all three species. If a child can do it, then surely adults can learn to do the same. Vera spoke quietly with Rose and Amy in their own language. The conversation was intense but not hostile. Finally, Vera turned back to the group. We will attempt this experiment, but there must be rules to prevent conflicts and protect all our people. We propose a trial period of 1 year to see if such cooperation is truly possible. Luna consulted with Maya and the other elves before responding. We agree to the trial, but the colony must be established in a new location that belongs equally to all groups. No one species should have advantage over the others. Jake felt excitement building as he realized that his simple suggestion might actually become reality. I know the perfect location. There is a valley east of here with good water sources and mineral deposits. It is far enough from both the elf forest and the Kyrithi landing site to be neutral territory. As the storm finally began to calm outside, Jake reflected on how much had changed in just 3 days. Groups that had expected to fight each other were now planning to build a new type of society together. Zara had fallen asleep, curled up between her mother and Jake. The small creature who had once been lost and alone would now grow up in a world where three species worked together instead of against each other. Jake did not know that word of their unusual alliance would soon spread across the galaxy. He did not know that other species would send representatives to study their experiment in cooperation. Most importantly, he did not know that Zara would grow up to become a symbol of peace and understanding that would influence interspecies relations for generations. But as Jake listened to elves and Kyrithi making plans together, he felt proud of what they had accomplished. His decision to help one small creature had led to something much larger than he had ever imagined possible. 6 months later, Jake stood on a hill overlooking Haven Station and marveled at what they had built together. The valley below bustled with activity as beings from 3 different species worked side by side on their shared community. The settlement was unlike anything that had ever existed before. Elf bioarchitecture blended seamlessly with Kyrithi engineering and human practical design. Buildings grew from living wood, but were reinforced with metal alloys that could withstand any storm. Gardens and workshops sat side by side, while laboratories and living spaces shared the same structures. Jake watched as Vera and Luna worked together to plan the expansion of their power systems. The unlikely partnership between the Kyrithi warrior and elf leader had become one of the strongest friendships in the colony. They combined Vera's knowledge of energy systems with Luna's understanding of biological processes to create innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. Nearby, Amy and Maya were training a mixed group of colonists in defense techniques. Maya taught elven stealth and camouflage while Amy demonstrated Kairothi combat skills. The students included humans who learned quickly and adapted the techniques to their own abilities. Kate had become the colony's first interspecies diplomat and was busy documenting the new customs and laws they were developing. Her work would serve as a guide for other colonies that wanted to attempt similar cooperation. But it was Rose who had surprised everyone the most. The suspicious Kairothi warrior had become fascinated with elf biotechnology and was now working closely with Luna's research team. Her engineering skills helped the elves solve practical problems, while their biological knowledge opened new possibilities for Kairothi technology. Jake smiled as he remembered the early days when these same individuals had been ready to fight each other. Now they were planning joint research projects and sharing meals together. The sound of happy chirping drew Jake's attention to the central plaza, where Zara was playing with a group of young colonists. The small creature had grown considerably over the past months, but remained gentle and friendly. Her unique upbringing had made her a natural mediator who could communicate easily with individuals from all three species. Zara had become the unofficial mascot of Haven Station. Children from all three species adored her, and adults found that her presence helped them overcome cultural differences. When tensions arose between groups, Zara seemed to sense the problem and would do something that reminded everyone of their shared goals. Jake walked down the hill toward the colony center, where he had a meeting with the planning committee. As the settlement's administrator, he was responsible for coordinating the needs of all three species and ensuring that resources were distributed fairly. The planning committee met in a circular chamber that had been designed specifically for multi-species use. Kairothi preferred to stand during meetings, while elves liked to sit in natural positions, and humans used chairs. The room accommodated all three preferences, with different levels and seating options. The mineral extraction project is ahead of schedule, Jake reported to the group. The Kairothi mining equipment, combined with human geological surveys and elf environmental protection, has created the most efficient operation any of us have ever seen. Vera nodded approvingly. Our people are impressed with the results. The metals we are producing here are of higher quality than what we usually obtain from conquest or trade. Luna added her own perspective. The mining operation has also helped restore balance to our forest ecosystem. By removing excess minerals from the soil, our plants are growing better than ever before. The success of their joint projects had exceeded everyone's expectations. Each species brought unique strengths that complemented the others perfectly. Problems that would have been difficult for any single group became simple when they worked together. We have received communication requests from 17 different species who want to visit Haven Station, Cade reported. Word of our success is spreading throughout the galaxy. This was both exciting and concerning news. Jake and the others had always known that their experiment would attract attention, but they had not expected so much interest so quickly. We must be careful about who we allow to visit, Maya warned. Some species might try to disrupt our cooperation or steal our innovations. Amy suggested a screening process for potential visitors. We should only allow delegations from species that demonstrate genuine interest in peaceful cooperation. Over the following weeks, Haven Station hosted its first official visitors. A delegation of peaceful traders arrived to study their economic systems. Scientists from 3 different species came to observe their research projects. Even some former enemies of the Kairothi sent representatives to learn about their new peaceful initiatives. Each group of visitors left impressed by what they had seen. Many returned to their homeworlds with plans to attempt similar cooperative projects. Jake realized that Haven Station was becoming a model for peaceful interspecies relations. The success brought new challenges. As the colony grew larger, it became more difficult to maintain the close cooperation that had made everything possible. Some newcomers did not understand the cultural compromises that had been necessary to create harmony. There were also external pressures. Military leaders from several species criticized their own governments for pursuing cooperation with former enemies. Some extremist groups threatened to attack Haven Station to prevent the spread of peaceful ideologies. But the original colonists had learned to trust each other completely. When threats arose, they faced them together as a unified community. Kyrithi warriors protected elf researchers while human engineers worked with both groups to strengthen their defenses. Zara played an important role in helping newcomers adapt to the colony's multi-species culture. The young creature had an instinctive ability to sense when individuals were struggling with cultural differences. She would approach confused or frustrated newcomers and somehow help them understand how to interact successfully with other species. Jake often watched Zara work with new arrivals and marveled at her abilities. The small creature, who had once been lost and starving, had become a bridge between species who had been enemies for centuries. One evening, as Jake sat in his quarters, writing his daily report, Zara climbed into his lap, as she had done so many times before. The creature was much larger now, but still enjoyed the comfort of being close to her first friend. "You know, Zara, none of this would have happened if I had not found you that day," Jake said softly. "Your trust and friendship changed everything." Zara made soft purring sounds and nuzzled against Jake's chest. Her scales shifted to the warm golden color that indicated contentment and happiness. Jake thought about how his simple mining mission had turned into something so much larger. He had come to this planet looking for valuable minerals and had found something far more precious. Proof that different species could live and work together in peace. The communication panel in Jake's quarters chimed with an incoming message. It was from Earth Command congratulating him on the success of Haven Station and informing him that similar colonies were being planned on 12 other worlds. Jake realized that what had started with one small act of kindness was now spreading across the galaxy. Species that had never considered cooperation were beginning to explore the possibilities. Old enemies were talking about peaceful coexistence as he prepared for sleep. Jake looked out his window at the lights of Haven Station. In the central plaza, he could see beings from different species sharing evening meals and planning tomorrow's projects. Children from all three species played together, while their parents worked on joint research initiatives. Somewhere in the colony, Vera was probably teaching human engineers about Kyrithi metallurgy, while Luna showed Kyrithi scientists how to grow buildings from living wood. Kate was documenting new customs that emerged when different cultures learned from each other. Maya and Amy were planning defense strategies that incorporated the best techniques from multiple species. Jake felt proud of what they had accomplished, but he also knew that their work was just beginning. Haven Station was proof that cooperation was possible, but it would take time and effort to convince the entire galaxy to embrace peaceful solutions. As Jake drifted off to sleep with Zara curled up beside him, he dreamed of a future where every planet hosted mixed colonies like Haven Station, a future where species differences were celebrated rather than feared, and where children like Zara grew up thinking that cooperation between species was natural and normal. Jake did not know that his dream would eventually become reality. He did not know that historians would mark the founding of Haven Station as the beginning of the great peace that would last for centuries. Most importantly, he did not know that Zara would grow up to become the first elected leader of the Galactic Cooperation Council. But as Jake slept peacefully in the colony he had helped create, he understood that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could have the greatest impact. His decision to help one lost creature had proven that compassion and understanding could overcome even the deepest prejudices. In the morning, Jake would wake up to continue building a better future for all species. But tonight, he rested contentedly, knowing that his simple act of feeding a hungry cub had changed the galaxy forever.